Hello, and welcome to another edition of Bill and Kipp's Excellent Bible Adventure. We're continuing looking at the Gospel of John. This week we're looking at the 8th chapter. I'm Bill Brunson, and this is Kipp McClurg. We're two of the pastors here at Vestavia Hills Methodist, and we're glad that you've joined us today as we start looking at another one of the characters, another one of the stories that seems to stand out in the Gospel of John. And I noticed that today we have rocks.
We have rocks, not really, again, keeping the budget low. These are not terribly expensive rocks, and in fact, they didn't cost us anything. But pretty common in most parts of the world, certainly common in Jesus' part of the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And very much a part of the story that we are dealing with today. It happens in John chapter 8, the very beginning. And John chapter 8, it's the story of the woman who was caught in adultery. It's an odd sort of piece in John because the wording that leads to this story feels cut off, feels disjointed, and likewise it picks back up and it feels sort of oddly placed. Mm-hmm. But Christian tradition has left it in John, and this story I think is one that most of us connect well with because I think we've all sort of been in a similar place that this woman found herself.
Right.
And so she was drugged into the temple on a charge. And so we think back to the time of Jesus. There were multiple layers of governance that happened. You had certainly the emperor, the Caesar, over all of the Roman Empire. There would have been provincial governors or kings. Mm-hmm. Pilate during Jesus' day was sort of that, filled that role. Then you had members of the Herod family, which were sort of appointed by Caesar because, well, the Romans didn't quite understand all the religious culture that happened in that part of the world, and it took very little to start a riot. And if you did the wrong thing, even as a Roman governor, you could create a riot and have to clean it up.
Yes.
But the Herods seemed to halfway understand this and be able to deal with it better. And then you had, for the Jewish people, you had the Sanhedrin and scribes and Pharisees that would sort of control things at the religious level. So you had multiple kinds of governance going on. And so in this case, this woman was accused of breaking the law of Moses. And of course, you know, we've had in this, throughout John, this ongoing dialogue between Jesus sort of using Moses as a weapon against the scribes and the Pharisees. Yeah. And so they come saying, hey, by Moses' law, this woman has committed adultery. She deserves to die. What do you think we ought to do?
Right. And it's for them to bring that to Jesus, it's trying to back him into a corner. Mm-hmm. Because he has been, you look at his miracles, he has been merciful time and time again with people. Even the man who is laying by a pool, he goes over to him, and after 38 years, he gives him new life. And we're going to see this time and again throughout the gospel stories, Jesus offering hope and help to people. And so they bring this woman to Jesus, caught in adultery.
Obviously, there's not a lot of question.
Right. And they do it, though, in a way that they're trying to back Jesus into a corner of, so what do you think we ought to do? They are anticipating that Jesus will say, I know what the law of Moses says, but come on, she looks like a nice person. If she says she's sorry, no. They're wanting him to say something like that. They're expecting him to say something like, you know, the law of Moses shouldn't be followed in this case. But that's not what he does. Of course, there's a lot of, in the oddities of this, you also have to take into account that typically when someone was caught in adultery, for a charge to be brought, you had to have both people. It's really hard to be caught in adultery by yourself. But caught in adultery, both people, there has to be at least one witness, if not two or three or more, that you have witnesses that have caught the person. And usually the priest would write, or whoever was adjudicating the case would write the names of the people using a stick, would write the names of the people in the dust on the ground. And because that way it's temporary, but it names the people being charged. And then it can be wiped away once the charge is complete. And so you have these people, you don't have these people here. You have a woman. One woman. Not the person that she was with, not the lineup of witnesses that all are there to give testimony. You have one woman standing there, and they're asking Jesus, law of Moses is clear what we should do in this case. We should kill her. What do you think about that? And just trying to push him to that point of violating the law so that they can entrap him. It's an odd case.
And so he doesn't say a lot, which is kind of odd because, 6 and 7, he's saying a whole lot.
In 7, he's yelling.
Everybody.
In 7, he's yelling about the rivers of living water flow through him. And now he stands there silently.
And he takes up the stick, not writing, I don't suppose, the witnesses' names, but writing something.
Something. We don't really know what he writes in the sand.
And it's this dramatic moment of pause and quiet. And finally he looks back at the accusers and says, "You who are without sin, you cast the first stone." And then what happens?
Because typically, if you're stoning someone in this period of time, for this poor woman, they would have, if it were a normal case and you have a person being stoned and you have the witnesses, you took the person out.
Right.
And you threw them off the wall and they landed below. And then, if you're a witness, if you're the first witness, you pick up the first stone and you throw the first stone down on her. And then the second witness picks up the next stone and throws it down. And then everyone else then can come, everyone that wants to basically can come and throw stones down. And there's a limit to how many stones are dropped. And then if you don't die, then they would actually come and use a club and end your life. And so Jesus is looking at these people who are all standing around. They have these stones in their hand. They're ready to go to the wall and watch this person fall down. And he asks that question. He makes that statement, "You who are without sin, cast the first stone."
They weren't witnesses.
No.
And
they could be the one cast down the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Is the reality.
Absolutely. And I think it becomes for us, and I think one of the reasons it is such a popular story is it's a reminder to us that we all have a history. We all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, as Paul said. And it's easy for us, I like to say it's easy for us to have a list of sins that we're not guilty of. And usually those are the sins that we look at other people kind of down our noses and go, yeah, well, look at what they're doing.
Right.
Forgetting that there's probably a list of things that we by omission or commission are guilty of, but we put it out of our mind or justify it or somehow make it less than it really is.
Yeah.
But when we look at this list, we look good, and everybody else looks bad.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I think, is ever a reminder to us that we all have sinned.
Yeah. That while the sin that person may have committed may not be ours.
Right.
We have ours that they may not have committed. And they need mercy, but so do we. They need forgiveness, and so do we.
Absolutely. And I think it's also a model for us when others are accusing someone or saying something about someone's character.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus' response was not to hit like and share.
Yeah.
That was not it. It was silence.
Yeah.
And I think we're called upon to recognize that we don't need to participate in those kinds of behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
but rather we should try to bring healing to the situation and not to bring harm.
Yeah. There's enough accusations and misinformation out there.
Yeah.
We don't need to add to that.
No, absolutely not. So this story then kind of serves as this constant reminder that probably saying less is not a bad idea, and remembering that as someone once said, I, the chief of sinners, am, but Jesus died for me.